navigation bar for my web page. Now, most people, when they create a web page, what they'll do is they'll add their links in, like I have down here in my code on the left hand side. And all I have here is ahref, and I left it blank since I don't have pages already created. So the proper way is just leave within quotation marks, just leave it blank until you have your page's name. Sometimes you can put default page names in there if you wanted to. That's up to you on that part. But what I'm going to do here is, I put the links in, and if you look over here on the right hand side where I have it viewed, you can see that the links come in and they go across horizontal. That's great, but if you really want more control over your navigation bar and you want to go in and control the spacing and between the links and making sure there's exact amount of space and things like that, then we need to really look at it in a little more detail. So what I'm going to do here, is I want to work with this navigational section I have in my code. Okay, and a preferred way to create this navigation bar is to work with list. And list in HTML, we're using either a UL or a OL to indicate a numbered or a bullet list. Now there's some issues we have to worry about, but once we go in and we take care of those issues with our style sheets, then it becomes easier to work with. So what we're going to do is we're going to create and take our navigation bar, our links here, and make them into a list item. So, and it's really simple to do. So what I'm going to do here is right before my first anchor tag, I'm going to go ahead and add a UL. And what I want to do here is I'm also going to give it a name. I'm going to use the ID. So I want to uniquely identify this section, and that's where the IDs come into play. Because if you have other lists on your page, then it's going to be a conflict, because it'll take all the styles and apply it to every list on the page, and we only want to apply it to this section. So that's where the ID comes into play. So I'm going to put in nav list and give it a name, and again use an ID. Now if I have an opening tag here, I'm going to put a closing tag down here right after all my anchor tags here. Now what you have to do also is put the list tag in as well, and you have to list your items in your navigation bar, basically. So what I'm going to do is click before each LI, I'm going to put, or before each anchor tag, I'm going to put the LI tag in. Now I'm just going to copy and paste this down and put it right before each of those. Now just remember, if you have an opening tag here, you got to have a closing tag. And one thing to remember, I always like to think of this way, where do I put that closing tag? If it's the first tag in the line, it's always going to be the last one shown. So what I want to do is I'm going to click after the closing A tag. A lot of people will put it right before the closing A tag, and no, you have to put it after because the LI comes first, and so it should be always the last one shown. So I'm going to put the closing LI in, and then I'm just going to take and select that and copy and paste it using my keyboard shortcuts. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I'm going to reload over here. Now what happens here, by default the list is going to be indented from the left side, and it also is going to add bullets. We don't want that. And then also we want to make it go across horizontal. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove the indentation and the bullets, and I'm going to do that with adding styles. So what am I going to do? I'm going to actually add a style to that new section called nav list. Now when we do this in the style section, I already have my style tags up here at the top, and this is called a internal style sheet. You can also add it into your external style sheet if you wanted to, but it has to be within the style section or on your external style sheet. It doesn't matter where on this. So I'm going to come up here, I'm just going to start off, when I'm ever apply a style to an ID, I have to start off with the pound sign and then followed by the name. So in this case, I named it nav list, curly brace. To remove the padding and indentation, the spacing, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the padding option and the margin option. Okay, so I'm just going to say padding :0, margin :0. Don't forget your semicolons because it ends the property, or that ends that style attribute that you have, and so it knows that there's another line down below with that. If we're going to go in and I want to remove the bullets, then we use a style called list -style -type, and we tell it to be none. Okay. Oops. And then what we'll do here is I want to go in and put my last curly brace in. So you got to remember everything has to go in between the curly braces. Now when I save this, let's take a look here. Notice how the bullets disappear. And now what we're going to do is concentrate on trying to get everything horizontal and add some other styles with that. Now to do this, what we're going to do is we're going to have to tell, by default, when you add a list item, li, it goes in and thinks you need it once it's vertical. So what we have to do is apply a style that applies it to the li tag and tells it to go across horizontal. Now we're going to go in, we're going to start off with the pound sign, and we're going to type in nav list. Why? Because we're going to tell it to look in the nav list section, which is this section right here, and we're going to have it find the li element and apply the following style. Now you could just say li. The problem with that is that anywhere there's li on your page, it's going to make it go horizontally across. Now when we add the pound nav list to that, we're basically narrowing our style to just that section, to just that area. And then all we do here is we type in display :inline semicolon, and I'm going to put a curly brace in, and I save it and I reload, and there it is, going across horizontal. Now to add spacing, so a lot of times you want to control the spacing in between the links. Okay, well, what is controlling that? Well, it's actually the A tag. So we have to apply the style to the A anchor tag, and to do that we only want to affect that section again, so we're going to do the same thing. We're going to put a nav list A curly brace, and then we're going to just do margin. We're going to add space, and we're going to use the margin attribute, and I'm going to tell it to add space to the right side. So what it's going to do is it's going to take a look at the anchor tag that you have, and then it's going to, anywhere there's an anchor tag, it's going to add the space to the right. So it's going to force the links that we have there to have spacing to the right, so it's going to force everything to have a little extra buffer between. Now since I'm going to do that, I'm not going to say margin, I'm going to say margin -right, so it only affects the right side, 20 pixels, colon. I'm going to save this, I'm going to reload over here, and you can see now I have all this extra space in between. So it makes it easier to view the navigation bar. When you have the text so close together, it makes it harder. A lot of people, what they'll do is they'll try to put non-breaking spaces in, and what they do is they put breaking spaces so that it forces the text over. No, we don't do that. We work with styles, and we use the margin, we use the padding options to force that spacing that we want. Now if you wanted to, we can add some special other styles to kind of make it easier to look with. So if you want to reduce the space or add color, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to move this down to 5 pixels. I like to save and reload to see what the difference is. That's up to you on that part. And then what I want to do is I'm going to change the area here, I'm going to have a border added, and we're also going to go and have a background color. So I'm going to use the border style and the background color style. Okay. And again, I'm just doing a border colon, and I'm using a shortcut here saying solid 1 pixel, so it puts a solid border around the whole anchor tag. And then also it's going to put a background color behind the anchor tag. So when I click on save here and I could reload, oops, I'm missing one thing. Well, it looks like I forgot to click save, and then what I was going to do is click on reload, and you can see here what happens here. It puts a purple background and puts a purple border around the link itself. Now that doesn't look that attractive. Okay, so what we want to do here is I want to make that area larger. So I want that purple background to be a little bit larger, and I want to take away the underline. The underline that by default every hyperlink has it. So we're going to remove that because I have a border there. And what I want to do is I'm going to go in and use the padding option. And the padding basically forces spacing around or inside that area so that purple background will get larger. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to control the padding from on the top side, the left side, the right side, the bottom, and a little bit different. So usually when I do this, what we'll do is 5 pixels, and in between we put a space between our values, just like that. And then what will happen here, the first value stands for top, the 10 is the right, 5 here is the bottom, and the last 10 is for the left side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put in another style called text decoration, none, semicolon, and that's going to take away any of the hyperlinks that have the underlined. It will remove it. So when I click on save here, notice when I click on reload over here on the right, notice how the underline disappears, and notice how that area becomes more a little bit larger. So then it also makes it easier to click on as well. So, which is kind of cool on that part. Now, one of the things that you'll have issues with is that if you resize this window, make it smaller, your navigation buttons will actually wrap around like that. To prevent that from happening, then you want to control the navigation bar's width. Okay? So that width is the nav list section that we have here. So I want to go up to my nav list section. I'm going to add another line here. I'm just going to type in width, 900 pixels. This all depends on what is the width of your page. So some people go 960, 1024. So you have to, based on what your plan is. Now when I save this and I reload over here, now when I resize my window to make it smaller, notice my navigational buttons do not wrap around. So if your navigation buttons are wrapping around, you need to add a width to your nav section. And that's a very simple thing. You just type in width, and then the measurement amount that you're working with. Now, you can also go in and start experimenting with this a little bit more. So if you wanted to, you don't have to have a border going around the whole thing. You can have a border just on the right side. You can have a border on the left side. You can go in and have no border. You can change the colors if you wanted to. You can add hover effects. So when I bring my mouse over top of the area, it changes a color on that. So really what we're doing here is we're setting up our navigation in a list format to get more control. Once we get that control, then we can go in and start adding styles and doing some other things to it to modify that. Like for example, one thing you can go in is maybe you want to make sure each of the width of the buttons are the same. So notice how the FAQ, that over here on the right hand side, it's a little smaller area compared to what's in Contact Us. So what we can do here is we can go in, and I'm going to go to my nav list anchor style, because that's what we're doing. We're controlling the anchor section. And I can go in and control the width of that. And I'm going to use, for example, 7M. Okay, I'm going to click on save. I'm going to reload. And I need to also, I also need to put in, I have to put one more option in for this to work. And I forgot all about it. You got to tell it display as block. What that does is creates basically a button for you. So now when I reload, can you see how it's the same size? Now, what happens here, as we see here, you can see that it automatically, when we say display block, it went back and created a vertical look on that. But when it created the vertical look, it did make each of the sections the same size, which is great. However, it caused another issue. The issue is it's now going vertical instead of horizontal. So what we have to do is add another style to our LI element that says, hey, I don't want it to go that way. I want it to float to the left of each other. And what I want to do here is I'm just going to go under in the nav list LI, I'm going to type in float : left. And so that's going to force each of the sections to float to the left side of each other. So when I save this and I reload now, see now it's up here, and it's, again, side by side, and it's the exact same width of the button that we're looking for. Now granted, there's other things that appear. So this is everything about HTML. What's going to happen is you make one change, you might have to modify something else to get it to work. So like here, you say, I like how it came out, but what can I do to make the text centered? Well, I can go back into my nav list A section and I can add text align center semicolon. I save this, I reload, and puts the text in the center of that area. So again, it gives you better control when you have everything set up as a list, because then you can start applying these styles and get something that you really want from your navigation bar. Because again, as you start learning new things, you can change you can go in and bring your mouse up over top of one of these areas and it'll change the background color, so you can have a hover effect. Very simple to do. Well, how do I do it? I'm going to have to go in. I'm going to tell it to go in and look at my nav list. I'm going to create another style here. I'm going to take the A. I'm going to say, okay, when I have a hover effect, I'm going to do it with A : hover. You have to put the A : hover. It's a yeah, if I can say it right, Puedo style look, and it just extends that anchor style. So you're saying if this happens, then apply the style. So what I'm going to do is going to have it change the color of the text. And I'm going to also change the background color. And I'm also going to make the font weight bold so it stands out a little bit. Okay, so when I save this, I'm going to reload over here. Notice again with the hover effect. So again, you can have fun with this. That's the fun part of going in and working with this. And the background color I think did not change because I put 2 O's in instead of zeros. There we go. Should have been blue. Now, granted, those are probably not the colors you would use because it's definitely not matching for a color scheme, but that's something that you can work with. So the key is to get the structure set up first and then start working with the styles and manipulating it to fit your color scheme, to fit your website. So hopefully it points you in the right direction. There's a lot of websites out there that'll help you create a navigation bar. You can go in and work with vertical navigation bars. You can work with horizontal. There's different things you can actually work with. So check out some websites, get some excellent information out there, and hopefully it helped you out.